There comes a time in every life when silence becomes more powerful than response, when restraint is mightier than rage, when the holiest move you can make is to simply walk away, not with bitterness in your heart, not with revenge in your eyes, but with a quiet understanding that God is your defender, your avenger, and your shield. This message today is not about anger. It's about wisdom. It's not about pride. It's about power. There are some battles you don't need to fight because God already declared the outcome. You don't need to explain yourself to people who never intended to understand you. You don't need to keep watering relationships that only bring drought to your soul. The strongest thing you can do in this season is to stop reacting and start releasing. Cut them off, not with noise, but with peace. Sometimes the loudest response is no response. Sometimes your greatest weapon is your absence. There are people who feed off your energy, who thrive off your reaction, who find pleasure in pushing your buttons just to see if you'll lose control. But when you choose silence, you take back your authority. When you choose to walk away, you reclaim your peace. And when you choose to cut them off quietly, you declare to the heavens and to your own soul, I trust God more than I trust my emotion. I will not let someone else's dysfunction disturb my. God sees what they said behind your back. God knows how they smiled in your face and stabbed you when you turned away. God heard the lies, the manipulation, the mockery. And while your heart may cry out for justice, let your spirit cry out for discipline. God does not need your reaction. He needs your obedience. Because sometimes, in your effort to defend yourself, you delay God's judgment. When you try to make them feel your pain, you interfere with what God is about to do. And God does not need your help. He needs your surrender. There are people God told you to let go of a long time ago. But you held on, didn't you? You thought maybe they would change, maybe they'd wake up and treat you differently, maybe they'd apologize, maybe they'd value your presence, but here you are again, drained, disappointed, and discarded. How many times will you return to what broke you before you realize God is calling you out of that cycle? That's not love, that's bondage. That's not patience, that's self-abandonment. And God did not place you on this earth to be someone else's punching bag or emotional garbage can. Cut them off, not with hatred, but with healing. Not with arrogance, but with assurance that God is with you. You see, some people are seasonal. They were never meant to go with you to the next level. They were never assigned to your future. They were only part of your process. And once their role is finished, you must be willing to release them. You don't need to curse them. You don't need to expose them. Just quietly remove yourself and let God do the rest. Let God deal with their heart, their conscience, their soul. You don't need to dirty your hands trying to make things right. God is the great equalizer, and He will repay. Reaction is the bait of the enemy. He wants to get a rise out of you. He wants to provoke you into acting out of character, into sabotaging your blessings, into forfeiting your peace. But when you resist that temptation, when you keep your composure in the face of chaos, you send a message to the spirit realm that says, I am no longer moved by the flesh. I am governed by something greater. I am anchored in the power of God. I will not give you the satisfaction of seeing me lose control. I will not give you the thrill of watching me bleed. I will keep my peace. Because my peace is not a weakness. It's a weapon. There is strength in silence. There is dignity in detachment. There is power in walking away without a word. Not because you are cold-hearted, but because you are clear-minded. You understand that your energy is sacred, that your time is valuable, that your spirit is precious. And you will no longer cast your pearls before swine. You will no longer beg for love. You will no longer plead for respect. If they don't see your worth, it is not your job to convince them. God already called you chosen. God already set you apart. And when God favors you, no human rejection can undo that. Some people can only access you because you keep opening the door. You keep answering the calls, responding to the messages, entertaining the same drama. And every time you go back, you teach them that your boundaries are just suggestions. But enough is enough. You must draw the line. You must teach your soul how to detach. You must teach your heart that love does not mean tolerating pain. God never told you to be loyal to what is toxic. God never called you to be faithful to dysfunction. Some of you are afraid to cut people off because you don't want to look like the bad person. But let me tell you something. Your healing is not a crime. Your growth is not an offense. And your boundaries are not disrespectful. They are necessary. Cut them off and don't explain it. Cut them off and don't justify it. Cut them off and let the silence speak, because silence reveals what noise tries to hide. In the stillness, people hear their own conscience. In the quiet, they begin to feel the weight of their actions. And what you could never communicate with words, God will make them feel through your absence. Some people will never realize your value until your presence becomes memory. Some will never appreciate your loyalty until they see what life is like without your consistency. Let God teach them what your presence taught them for free. Stop trying to fix what God is trying to end. Stop reviving relationships God buried for your protection. Stop giving CPR to dead situations. When God closes a door, He is not asking for your opinion. He is calling you higher. He is calling you out of the shadows, out of the cycles, out of the sorrow. Don't mourn over what God removed. Rejoice that you have finally been released. You were never created to live in bondage to someone else's brokenness. God wants to elevate you. But elevation requires separation. You can't go higher if you're dragging dead weight. Some of you are losing sleep, not because of stress, but because your spirit is fighting what your flesh keeps feeding. You know deep down they're not good for you. You know they drain you, belittle you, manipulate you, but you keep holding on, hoping they'll change. Meanwhile, God is whispering, let them go. Stop confusing your assignment. You're not their healer. You're not their savior. You're not their emotional rehab center. You are a vessel of God's purpose. And every second you waste trying to fix what's not yours to fix, you delay your destiny. People will say you've changed. Let them talk. People will say you're cold. Let them whisper. People will say you're selfish. Let them gossip. But only you and God know the cost of your peace. Only you and God know what you've endured in silence. Only you and God understand what it took to finally choose yourself. And choosing yourself is not selfish. It's stewardship. It's protecting the temple God gave you. It's honoring the life God entrusted to you. Because you can't pour into others when you are running on empty. You can't lift others when you are buried in their burdens. You must rise, and sometimes rising means leaving people behind. Not everyone can go where God is taking you. Some people were assigned to your past, not your future. Some were part of your test, not your testimony. And if you keep trying to bring them into your destiny, they will only delay your breakthrough. Let them go, not with hatred, but with holiness. Not with bitterness, but with boundaries. Because God is trying to make room for something greater, and as long as your hands are full of what is familiar, you won't be able to receive what is divine. There's a time to speak, and there's a time to be silent. There's a time to confront, and there's a time to retreat. There's a time to fight, and there's a time to walk away. The difference is discernment. And discernment comes from God. When you are tuned into God's voice, you'll stop falling for every trap of the enemy. You'll stop reacting out of wounds and start responding with wisdom. You'll stop needing closure because you realize that God is your closure. And when God closes a chapter, no man can reopen it. You owe no one access to your peace. You owe no one an explanation for your healing. You owe no one the sacrifice of your sanity. Some of you have given too much, tolerated too long, endured too deeply, and it's time to stop, not with rage, not with revenge, but with reverence for the God who is calling you out, the God who is saying, be still and know that I am your defender. You don't need to clap back. You don't need to prove a point. God will speak louder than any words you could ever say. There is healing in detachment, there is restoration in release, and there is victory in silence. Let your growth be your answer. Let your peace be your response. Let your distance be your declaration. Because when God sets you apart, no one can keep you trapped. When God separates you for His purpose, He removes what no longer serves it. Trust Him. Trust the silence. Trust the distance. Trust the cutoff. It is not punishment, it is protection. It is not cruelty, it is clarity. It is not abandonment, it is alignment. So walk away, child of God, not because you hate them, but because you finally love yourself. Not because you're proud, but because you're finally wise. Not because you're better, but because you're ready. Ready to grow, ready to heal, ready to rise. And as you rise, may you rise in silence. Let the world wonder why. Let the heavens rejoice, for you are no longer a prisoner to your past. You are a steward of your peace. And your peace, your sacred, holy, God-given peace, is worth more than any argument, any explanation, or any apology you never received. Let them talk, let them wonder, let them twist the truth, because God knows, God saw, God heard, and God will handle it. You just keep walking, keep rising, keep choosing peace. Keep trusting silence, for in the silence, God is speaking. In the stillness, God is moving. And in your surrender, God is working. Let them go and let God work. There are moments in life when the loudest message you can send is your silence. Not the kind that is empty or bitter, but the kind that is filled with power and rooted in trust. Trust that God sees what man cannot, hears what man conceals, and acts when your strength has run out. You don't always have to raise your voice to make an impact. Sometimes God brings victory not through noise, but through quiet obedience. When you stop reacting to every insult, every betrayal, every manipulation, you declare with your life, I no longer bow to chaos. I rise in peace because God is my refuge. Let them misunderstand you. Let them twist your silence into arrogance. Let them call your peace weakness. But you know the truth. God is guiding you away from what diminishes you and into what strengthens you. What feels like isolation is often God's preservation. He is pulling you back not to punish you, but to protect you from people and environments that poison your soul. You may feel like you're losing people, but in reality, you're gaining clarity. When God removes someone, it's not always a subtraction, it's often a divine multiplication. He is adding to your future by subtracting what doesn't belong in it. God never meant for you to chase people who don't cherish your spirit. He didn't design you to beg for connection where there is only confusion. The longer you keep trying to convince someone of your worth, the further you drift from the worth God already declared over your life. Stop explaining your heart to people who are committed to misunderstanding it. God is not asking you to make them understand. He is asking you to understand that your peace is a gift, not a bargaining chip. You are not obligated to set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm. Your warmth, your light, your presence, it's sacred. And when people show you they don't value it, believe them. Sometimes silence is God's way of sharpening your discernment. In the stillness, He reveals the true nature of the people around you. Not everyone who smiles at you is for you. Not everyone who walks with you is meant to stay. Some are merely spectators in your story, and when their part is over, their presence becomes a distraction. Do not grieve over their exit. Rejoice that God is clearing the path for something greater. When you cut off what is not of Him, you make room for what He has truly ordained. But you must be willing to lose comfort for the sake of peace, willing to lose familiarity for the sake of growth, willing to lose people for the sake of God. A silent cutoff is not cruelty, it's clarity. It's a declaration that your soul will no longer be held hostage by inconsistency, that your days of entertaining confusion are over, that your time of tolerating betrayal in the name of loyalty has expired. Loyalty to God must come before loyalty to man. If someone continually disrupts your peace, disrespects your presence, and disregards your value, it is no longer disloyal to let them go. It is disobedient to hold on. God cannot bless what you refuse to release. He cannot elevate you while you remain entangled in what keeps you beneath. Do not fear the silence. The silence is where God reveals His strength. In the absence of constant noise, you will hear His direction. In the absence of destructive voices, you will hear His wisdom. And in the absence of the wrong people, you will discover the right purpose. You are not called to fix everyone. You are not called to rescue every soul. That is a burden too heavy for human shoulders. You are called to walk in alignment with God's will, even if it means walking alone for a season, even if it means being misunderstood, even if it means being called cold or distant. The opinions of man are temporary, but the voice of God is eternal. And when He says, cut them off, He means it not to harm you, but to heal you. Some of you are wondering why your life feels stuck, why your prayers feel delayed, why your strength feels drained. And the answer is not always in what you're doing. Sometimes it's in who you're keeping. You're trying to carry people that God never assigned you to carry. You're building with bricks that were never part of your foundation. You're fighting battles that were never yours to fight. Let God fight for you. Let God expose what needs to be revealed. Let God remove what you're too attached to release. There is power in stepping back and letting God show you who they really are. You must stop tying your worth to someone else's treatment of you. Their inability to honor you does not reduce the value God placed on you. If someone rejects you, it does not mean you are unworthy. It means they are blind to your divine worth. If someone walks away from you, it is not always abandonment. It may be God's intervention. He sees what you cannot. He hears what they say when you are not in the room. He knows their intentions even when they smile in your face. Let Him remove them. And don't fight to keep what God is cleansing from your life. You must learn to bless people in your heart and then back away in your actions. Let them go without cursing them. Let them go without bitterness, but let them go completely. No more checking up on them in secret. No more second chances when they've abused the first 10. No more reopening wounds God already closed. When you walk away with resolve. When you cut off with peace, not with a war, not with a scene, but with dignity. Because you're not just walking away from them, you're walking toward God. And when you get there, when you arrive at that quiet place, you will realize that the peace you longed for was never in their apology, it was in your release. You were never meant to live in the chaos they brought. You were meant to live in the peace God gives. And that peace begins with one decision: to no longer engage in what drains your spirit, to no longer invest in what never poured back into you, to no longer lower your standards just to keep people who never raised you up. The person who chooses silence over reaction is not weak. They are wise. The person who chooses to walk away instead of retaliate is not passive. They are powerful. Because nothing terrifies the enemy more than a person who refuses to lose their peace. When you stop reacting, you stop feeding the fire. When you stop responding, you starve the enemy's agenda. And when you cut off quietly, You shift your focus from the problem to the provider, from the distraction to the deliverer, from the chaos to the creator. So let your life speak for you. Let your silence testify. Let your calm become your resistance. Let your growth become your greatest revenge. You don't need to throw stones. You just need to keep building. Build your character, build your faith, build your purpose, build your future. And as you build, let the ones who underestimated you watch. Let the ones who used you feel the loss of your presence, not because you want to hurt them, but because they need to learn that God's child is not to be played with. You are God's investment. You are God's vessel. You are God's assignment. You are too important to be distracted by people who don't see the weight of your calling. You are too valuable to be entangled in drama that keeps you from destiny. You are too anointed to be bound by approval. It's time to move differently, to walk in quiet authority, to trust that silence backed by God is louder than any argument ever made by man. And when the time comes when they realize what they lost, may they see not a bitter heart, but a better one, a heart refined by God, strengthened by silence, and rooted in peace. You do not need closure, you need clarity. You do not need their confession, you need God's confirmation. And He has already spoken. He has already shown you what you needed to see. Now it's time to act. Cut off with grace. Walk away with strength. And never look back. Because what's ahead is greater than what's behind. What God is preparing is greater than what people destroyed. What God is shaping in you is far more important than who you're letting go of. God will honor your silence. God will reward your restraint. God will lift you where others tried to pull you down. Trust Him. Trust the path even when it's lonely. Trust the silence even when it's misunderstood. Trust the separation even when it hurts. Because in that quiet place, God will build you stronger. In that secret place, God will prepare you deeper. And when He brings you out, you will not be bitter. You will be better. You will not be broken. You will be whole. And you will know, without a doubt, that the silence wasn't empty. It was sacred. It was the voice of God calling you higher. There is something deeply sacred about the person who learns to guard their peace with discipline, not because they are cold, but because they are finally awake. Awake to the weight of their calling, awake to the value of their time, awake to the schemes of the enemy who uses people, not always as enemies with visible swords, but as subtle thieves of joy, energy, and purpose. And when God opens your eyes to this, it becomes impossible to live as you did before. You begin to see how much energy you once wasted trying to explain yourself, defend yourself, justify your presence to people who were never meant to understand your spirit. But now you know, and knowing changes everything. God does not call you to be everywhere for everyone at all times. He is not glorified in your exhaustion. He is not honored in your depletion. He calls you to be wise, not worn out. He calls you to be fruitful, not frustrated. And sometimes, in order to walk in that divine flow, you must make holy decisions that others won't understand. You must choose your peace over popularity. You must choose your purpose over people-pleasing. And you must choose your stillness over the storms others try to drag you into. Because the person who can remain calm in the middle of a storm is not weak. They are covered. There is nothing more unsettling to someone who seeks to provoke you than your refusal to react. When you no longer rise to the bait, when you no longer flinch at the insult, when you no longer open the door to what once disturbed your soul, you take your power back. You show that your peace does not come from man, it comes from God. That your strength is not in the noise, it is in the stillness. That your confidence is not in control, but in surrender. For it is only when you truly surrender to God that you learn how to walk away with calm, with class, with courage, Cutting people off silently is not always about them, it's about you. It's about honoring the quiet voice in your soul that says, you don't belong here anymore. That inner knowing, that divine whisper, is God redirecting your steps, not out of vengeance, but out of vision. For where you're going, not everyone can follow. Where you're going, you need clarity. You need strength. You need purity of spirit. And if someone continually disrupts that, God will prompt you to release them. Not loudly, not with drama, but with peace. A peace that says, I love you, but I love God's plan for me more. When you stop reacting, you stop giving people access to your emotional triggers. You begin to starve the dysfunction that once had a hold on you. And in that starvation, something powerful happens. Your discernment grows. You no longer confuse chaos with passion. You no longer accept inconsistency as love. You no longer mistake loud voices for loyalty. Instead, you become grounded in truth. God becomes your compass. You begin to measure people not by how they make you feel in moments of charm, but by how they make you feel in moments of silence, struggle, and truth. God is not asking you to be rude. He's asking you to be wise, to no longer cast what is holy into hands that trample it, to no longer explain your boundaries to those who only seek to break them, to no longer accommodate what insults your spirit. And when you finally reach that place, when you are willing to walk away without needing a response, you are stepping into spiritual maturity. Maturity that doesn't seek to win arguments, but to maturity that doesn't need to control the narrative, because it trusts that God already knows the truth. You cannot carry oil in cracked vessels. And there are people who, no matter how kind you are to them, will leak your peace. You pour and they never retain. That's not your fault. That's not your burden. That's a signal, a sign that you are trying to fill what only God can repair. And when God gives you that insight, you must act. Cut them off, not out of hate, but out of reverence. Not out of malice, but out of obedience. Because continued connection to broken things only contaminates the oil of your calling. God cannot fill what you keep leaking. God is a God of order. And where there is disorder, He brings correction. Sometimes that correction is not a loud thunder, it is a quiet separation, a gentle closing of doors, a silent shift in relationships, a still movement that removes access without fanfare. Learn to recognize it. Don't mourn the people God removes when you asked Him to increase your peace. Don't weep over disconnections when you prayed for clarity. He is answering in ways that protect you more than you understand. You asked for discernment, He gave you distance. You asked for strength, He gave you silence. And in that silence, He is building you for something greater. Let this sink deep into your spirit. Peace is your confirmation. Peace is your permission. When God gives you peace about letting someone go, that is the only answer you need. You do not need a mutual agreement. You do not need a conversation that leads to closure. You do not need to explain your side. When the peace of God settles in your heart like a still wind on troubled waters, you will know that knowing is sacred. Honor it. And don't second guess the release just because it hurts. Some of the most powerful decisions you will ever make will come with tears. Tears do not mean the decision was wrong, they mean it was real. It means your soul is adjusting to the weight of your growth. Let the tears fall. Let the silence settle. And let the old version of you die quietly so the new you can rise without apology. There's a reason God commands stillness. In the stillness, He speaks what chaos drowns out. In the stillness, He restores what people tried to steal. In the stillness, He sharpens your vision. If the enemy cannot destroy you, he will distract you. And often his greatest weapon is a person. A voice that sounds good but leads you away from purpose. A presence that feels familiar but keeps you stuck in cycle. And the only way out is silence. When you stop explaining, defending, proving, you start healing. You start listening. You start hearing what God has been trying to tell you all along. Stop reopening doors that God has sealed. Stop revisiting conversations that only bring confusion. Stop allowing people to keep access to your peace while they keep polluting your spirit. You are not rude for drawing the line. You are righteous for protecting what is holy, and your peace is holy. Your mind is holy. Your space is holy. Your purpose is holy. Let the silence be a sanctuary. Let the cutoff be a consecration. You are not rejecting people. You are responding to God. God is calling you higher. That calling cannot be fulfilled while you are weighed down by distractions dressed in loyalty. Not everyone who walks with you is walking toward God. Some walk close just to delay you. Some smile just to study you. Some stay near just to keep you near confusion. But God is not the author of confusion. He is the author of peace. And when He stirs your spirit to step away, obey without hesitation. Your peace depends on it. Your calling demands it. Your destiny requires it. Silence is not an absence of power. It is the presence of discipline. It is proof that you are no longer led by flesh, but by Spirit. And when you walk in the Spirit, you will stop reacting to what doesn't deserve your energy. You will stop engaging with what doesn't deserve your voice. You will stop defending yourself to people who were never meant to be part of your purpose. Walk away and let your fruit speak for you. Let your character testify. Let your future echo the wisdom of your silence. You are not abandoning anyone by choosing peace. You are not betraying anyone by honoring your growth. You are not being selfish by stepping into the quiet where God meets you. Let the noise fade. Let the distractions fall. Let the unnecessary conversations die. There is work to be done in your soul, and that work cannot be done in the noise of conflict, chaos, and constant compromise. It must be done in silence, in solitude, in sacred separation. That is where God molds warriors. That is where God equips His chosen. That is where God lifts you. And when the silence becomes deafening, when the separation feels like solitude, remember this: God does His deepest work in hidden places. The seed grows not in sunlight, but in darkness. Roots take hold beneath the surface, unseen by human eyes, untouched by public opinion. God is not absent in your stillness. He is active. He is digging deep within you, cutting away attachments that choked your faith, pruning away relationships that bore no fruit, and preparing you for a season of clarity, purpose, and divine elevation. You are not forgotten. You are being refined. When you choose not to react, you are not losing your voice. You are finding your authority. You are telling the world that your emotions are no longer your master, that your peace is not up for negotiation, and that your time is too sacred to waste on arguments that have no eternal value. There is a wisdom that comes from God that will teach you when to speak and when to stay silent. That wisdom is your weapon. That silence is your shield. And when God covers you in peace, no accusation, no gossip, no misunderstanding can shake your foundation. There are people who will never understand your silence because they have never tasted the freedom of letting go. They confuse your calm with coldness, your boundaries with betrayal. But what they do not know is that your silence is not about them. It is about obedience. It is about walking away from what pollutes your spirit, even if the world calls it love. It is about honoring the quiet nudges of God that say, this is not your place anymore. You are not cold, you are clear. You are not bitter, you are better. You are not running, you are rising. God is not calling you to fix broken people who refuse healing. He is not asking you to carry burdens that He never placed on your back. You are not responsible for saving everyone. That is not humility, that is pride wrapped in pain. Only God can heal hearts. Only God can open eyes. Only God can stir repentance. You cannot do for others what they refuse to do with God. Let that weight go. You were not created to bleed so others can feel whole. You were created to walk in truth, and truth sometimes separates. And when the cutoff happens, when you finally decide to remove your presence from what no longer serves your growth, expect discomfort. Expect your flesh to fight back. Expect your mind to replay memories, to question your decisions, to wrestle with guilt. But stand firm. Let God remind you that growth often feels like loss, that elevation often looks like isolation, that purification often stings before it soothes. Trust the process. Trust the pain. Trust that what you are leaving behind cannot compare to the peace that is coming. Because when God removes something, He never leaves you empty. He replaces, He restores, He replenishes. God does not want you to react to every attack. He wants you to rise above it. When the enemy sends confusion, keep your clarity. When people stir gossip, keep your grace. When your name is slandered, keep your silence. Your silence is not surrender, it is strategy. It tells the enemy, you no longer control my mind, you no longer shake my heart, you no longer steal my sleep. Because the one who is anchored in God knows this truth. Nothing spoken against you can override what God has spoken over you. There are battles beneath your dignity. There are conversations beneath your calling. There are arguments that cost too much peace. And when you realize this, you will stop chasing apologies. You will stop explaining your intentions. You will stop fighting for space in people's lives who never made room for your soul. You will move on quietly, gracefully, with your head held high and your spirit intact, because you are no longer proving yourself to people. You are walking in the favor of God. God is not asking for your reaction. He's asking for your release. He's asking you to let Him be your defender. Let Him be your voice when others twist your words. Let Him be your justice when wrong is done in secret. Let Him be your covering when others seek your downfall. And the moment you hand it all to God, He takes it personally. He steps in. He vindicates. He elevates. Not because you cried the loudest, but because you trusted the deepest. Do not fear letting go. Do not fear being misunderstood. Do not fear being alone. The presence of people means nothing if they constantly drain your spirit. But the presence of God means everything, even in the silence. There is a quiet place in the soul where God dwells, and when you stop reacting to noise, you start hearing His voice more clearly. That still, steady, undeniable voice that whispers, you don't have to fight this, I already am. Some people were only assigned to test your boundaries. Others were allowed to reveal what still triggers you. But once the lesson is learned, the connection must be broken. Do not stay past the expiration of peace. Do not invest where God has removed favor. Do not dwell where your spirit no longer breathes. The cutoff is not always cruelty, it is divine closure. And when God closes a door, honor it. Don't knock on it. Don't beg it to open. Don't press your ear to it, hoping to hear a voice that no longer belongs in your story. Move on. You cannot become who you were born to be while clinging to what God is calling you to leave. You cannot reach your destiny with baggage from a former season. Let the silence cleanse you. Let the space restore you. Let the distance give you vision. And in that quiet place, God will begin to speak things your ears were too cluttered to hear before. Instructions, warnings, promises, wisdom. He will prepare you for what's next, and that preparation. So walk in silence, but do not walk in fear. Cut off the toxic, but do not cut off your compassion. Set boundaries, but keep your heart soft. Distance yourself, but pray deeply, because walking away is not rejection, it's redirection. You are not turning your back on them, you are turning your face toward God. And when you do, He will honor your obedience. He will heal what was broken. He will elevate what was hidden. And He will show you why the silence was necessary. The world glorifies reaction. It celebrates conflict. It rewards loud voices and public drama. But the kingdom of God honors peace. It treasures discipline. It promotes wisdom. And in God's system, sometimes the most powerful sermon is your silence. The most convincing argument is your peace. The most compelling message is your refusal to engage in what no longer serves your purpose. Let your life reflect the quiet strength of someone who has learned that you don't always have to fight to win. Sometimes you just have to let go. So now, I speak to your soul, not just your mind. It is time to stop living in the noise that pulls you away from your peace. Time to stop reacting to what was only sent to distract you from your calling. Time to step out of the patterns that drained your spirit and into the presence of God, where your healing, your strength, and your clarity await. Let today be the day you take your life back, not by shouting, not by fighting, not by proving your point, but by standing still in the power of God and saying with quiet courage, I will no longer respond to what seeks to destroy my peace. I belong to God, and that is enough. Let the silence speak. Let your absence declare what your words no longer need to explain. Let your obedience to God be louder than your defense of self, because the moment you stop explaining, God starts revealing. The moment you stop chasing what is not yours, God begins to release what has always been destined for you. But you must decide, will you keep feeding what is killing your spirit, or will you rise with God as your witness and walk away from everything that keeps you bound? Do not let fear hold you hostage. Do not let guilt chain your steps. You owe no one more of yourself than God has asked you to give. Let the people talk. Let the world wonder. Let those who misunderstood your silence twist it how they want, because in the end, only one voice matters, God's. And when He says, come away, my servant, come higher, you obey. No delay, no drama, no need for approval, for the path to peace is narrow and few will understand it. But if God walks with you on it, you will lack nothing. Now search your heart. Who have you kept near out of habit, not purpose? What noise have you allowed to stay, knowing it steals from your peace? What places have you remained in, not because God asked you to stay, but because you were afraid of the silence that would come if you left? This is your moment to surrender. Surrender the attachment, surrender the anger, surrender the need to be understood by people who were never called to walk with you. Let it all fall away, because what God has for you is sacred. And sacred things cannot thrive in polluted places. So walk with God, even if it means walking alone. Stand with God, even when it costs you everything. And speak through silence, trusting that God's justice is louder than any argument, more precise than any explanation, and more healing than any apology you never received. Let your peace be your statement. Let your boundaries be your prayer. Let your silence be your offering. And let your life be a living testament that when a soul chooses God over chaos, it finds not only power, but peace that this world cannot steal. Go now in courage, go now in reverence, go now in full confidence that when you choose not to react and instead quietly trust God, you are not losing, you are rising, and the heavens are watching, the earth is shifting, and God, your eternal defender, is moving on your behalf. Keep your silence holy, keep your walk steady, and keep your heart aligned, because when all is said and done, it won't be the noise that defines you, but the presence of God that surrounds you.